Are we live? Wonderful. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out on a surprisingly cold. I mean, has it even felt like winter in Phoenix? No, it's been in the 70s. I finally put on a sweater tonight just as a protest for the fact that I haven't been able to wear one. Anyway, we are delighted to have John McMahon back with us with Inside Man, which is a second book for his FBI guy who works in PAR, which I think is a great name, although it sounds slightly like golf, but pattern and recognition.
Yeah, absolutely. So with head cases, we introduced this specialty unit of the FBI, and it's really a place where you go with a case if it has an extraordinary puzzle that's hard to solve, and that's what their specialty is, like uncovering these weird cases that have riddles or puzzles.
Well, Gardner Camden is, there's quite a wave of investigators, some of them on television and some of them in books, that are neurodivergent in some way, very often to their advantage in terms of investigating because they have skill sets that, other people lack. So your guy, Gardner Camden, is one of these people, right?
Yeah, he definitely thinks different and sees things different, and he's like has an emotional deficit, but like an intellectual advantage when it comes to seeing cases. And it's really fun to have a character like that. You can put him in situations where he will react in a way like the opening of this book, where he decides, not to spoil anything because it'll be on the first couple of pages, to maybe destroy the entire scene, the scene of the crime. And someone wouldn't think that, but he thinks that, and it turns out to be like maybe that's the right decision. And he'll also be really emotionally blunted at times, and that's kind of fun to write and maybe hard to read sometimes too.
No, I don't think it's hard to read. I think it's fun. It also, the pacing of the story is really brisk because he doesn't waste like 2 minutes on extraneous stuff. Also, I was really impressed with the travel arrangements that you have in this book. Is it actually possible to do some of the trips in the time frame that you've laid out?
It is tight, but there are proofers who actually hold you to this and start pulling flight times and
Yeah,
things
right.
like that. So it is tight in some cases, but yeah, they're mostly moving. In the first book, in head cases, they were really traveling all over the country,
Right.
and they were a unit that was not allowed to travel because they're not good with people. And then in this case, they're really traveling throughout Florida where they're based. So I actually took 2 trips to Florida to test a lot of this stuff out and drove a lot of these places. I usually do that. In the first book, I drove the path backwards of the antagonist, and in this book, spent a lot of times driving like up throughout southern Florida to make sure some of that's possible. Maybe there's a couple flights that are tight.
Well, there certainly is one flight, and even if he has an emotional deficit, he really does love his mother. So he's supposed to go somewhere, and instead he just goes to Texas. I mean, which is, quite a hop. But then you saved yourself by having the FBI send a jet for him to get him back. I thought he's never going to make this appointment in New York from Dallas. It's just not going to happen. And then magically, this belly
Yes.
appears.
Well, his boss at some point gets frustrated with that
Right.
because it's like, hey, you say you're going to be in this place, you're in this other place. You're saying to be in this place, you're in this other place. If you're not here at this time, you're not working for us anymore. So the boss sends a jet, and that does solve the problem of like, how does he get back there? But
Yeah, but that's the most emotionally resonant that he is in both these books because his mom was damaged in the first book, and she's done this miraculous thing. This is slightly a spoiler, but she has been in a coma under care, and she has astounded everyone, her doctors and everybody, by coming back from it. Waking up, and so he goes there to, and I really like that in him because if he'd blown her off, I don't think I would have continued the book.
yeah, he has a relationship with his mom and his daughter that's really a break from who he is as a
Mhm.
person. And at some point, his ex's mom actually asks him about it, and in the book, she says, "Why did you do this thing?" He says, "Because when it comes to Camilla, which is his daughter, he tries to do the opposite of what he's normally inclined to do. He just assumes the opposite is what everyone else does, and he tries to just not be him. And that's his goal with his daughter, is to not be himself, to be someone better than him. So with his mom and his daughter, it's kind of they have a very kind of soft friendship, with him and his daughter, and then a really great, I think his mom is like, his mom throughout the first book is sort of you see a lot of echoes of him growing up, and a mother who really tries to figure out how this child is going to succeed in the world.
Right.
How this child of hers, who's very different than other people, is going to make it. And you see echoes of all their lessons. In the second book, spoiler, you see her a little bit again.
Right. So did you have to do some research into what happens to people who are put into a medically induced coma and then?
Absolutely, I did, and I have I have a lot of medical people in my family,
Yeah.
so without all that point, and also just a lot of the medical stuff that happens toward the end of the book, which I won't say that stuff at all, and I've got a lot of medical people in my family that really help out to advise, and when they say like, it's fiction, I say no, like, because you'll get readers. You'll get readers who I had someone who came to a book tour and said like, hey, in the first book, this vein would be on the front of the aorta, not on the side, or something like that. And I was
you haven't done as many events with gun guys as I have. I am here to tell you that if you get like one thing wrong, the whole room will erupt.
Well, I had some gun people write me on head cases because there was a particular chapter that I got some things wrong, now corrected in the paperback, and I got a lot of emails, and and I used to have I have a gun guy, and now I have a gun guy again because there's two stories in this book, and one of them is about a militia who's stockpiling weapons, so I needed to have a gun expert, and it was really great I had some people that I knew that introduced me to a gun person, and when you ask them questions, they say, those are so deep, I need to introduce you to my friend, this other gun guy, and then when that guy says I can't answer it, you say, I'm going to introduce you to this other gun guy, and eventually you get to the guy who's making, privately manufactured guns, like ghost guns, in his garage, and that's awesome. That's what you want. Like, eventually you get to that, and in this case, I had to get to that level.
Well, there's a lot to unpack in the book. I brought up the fact of his mother because he isn't necessarily all that likable, and I wanted you to know that stick with him because at heart, he is capable of really good feelings.
Yeah, a lot of people think he's really funny. I would get people who say in the first book he's so funny, and I would think that's really interesting, and I think his humor is often accidental, and it's an ensemble, so the great thing is you get to reflect your main character through all the other people. Parr has, a number of agents in it, and you have other people through you can see Gardner through.
I was so envious of his mathematical skills. I am a person who is practically enumerate, and I was just incredibly jealous when they would, ask him a question. He could rattle off the answer in seconds. Do you know anybody like that?
I do know some people like that, and it's really fascinating how the brain works. And for any people who don't know, Barbara has like a crazy memory, and can probably, if I asked her some book on some shelf here from 10 years ago, can probably tell you the plot of it. So maybe I know one of them here.
Well, but that's a different kind of memory, mine is I can remember anything I see, anything I read or movies. When we watch something, my husband, if we're home and we're going to watch some episodic thing on television, Rob will always say, didn't we see this? And I'll say, just cue up the first scene, because as soon as I see it, I will know if I've seen it, what happens.
Well, one of the things that was fun about this book, starting it, is this is a group that solves patterns. I said so I love puzzles and codes, that sort of thing. I'm sort of I have a fondness for those things, so it's fun to have a group like that. But one of the things I was trying to do in Inside Man is have one of the two cases has no patterns and right. has no clues like that. And so I started doing research on sort of crimes and then serial killer crimes at the FBI and what happens in those cases. So as it turns out, almost 2/3 of the serial killer crimes, when they catch the killer, They either have a financial motive or they have a relationship with one of the first two victims. And the question is, when those things are not happening, when they have no evidence, what do they do? And, if you think of this group is really a group of puzzle solvers, they're not traditional law enforcement types. What do they do when there are no patterns, when there are no riddles, when there are no nothing? How do they solve that? So that's one of the fun things I started the book with. It's like, what if one of the two cases has none of that? What do? Do they think they're failures? Do they think somebody else should be on it? So that was one of the fun things in the book.
Yeah, but they have a problem of managing expectations since they are so good at puzzle solving. It's really hard. He has a contentious relationship with his supervisor at the FBI who expects more of him that in this particular case they are easily able to deliver.
He's probably the most fun character I've written in a book is the character of Craig Polton, who's the director of the FBI, because he's so slick and so political, and Gardner is completely the opposite and is so blunt and stunted emotionally. So when the two of them get together, it's so much fun. I love writing Craig. He's so smart and so sleazy that it's just a blast. I miss him when I'm not writing him,
Yeah, but to be fair, I think that Gardner has his own armor against Craig. Without that, Craig might really destroy him. But as it is, it kind of bounces off Gardner.
Yeah, and this is the book where they start getting to know each other a lot better. And Craig starts saying, well, this is the circumstance where you tell me the probability is this and the probability is that. And when Gardner says, I have no idea what the probability is, it sort of drives him even crazier. So I think they have a great back and forth. But yeah, love Craig Polton, and he's sort of, I'm writing the next book right now, and he's sort of at the center of that book, and because I love having fun with him in it.
So talk to us about confidential informants, which is a critical part of this book.
Yeah, so they have this will not sort of spoil the book, but the book opens with their confidential informant, like right in the opening scene, being dead. And the question of what happened to him. The interesting thing the book starts with is that their CI, they look through his phone, and the CI is in the inside of a militia who's stockpiling weapons, and the militia is like, where is he? Why is he not responding? So it's very clear right away that the militia doesn't know where the CI is, and they don't know he's dead either. So the question comes well, if they didn't kill him, they must not know he works for us. And if they don't know he works for us, who killed him? So right away you're set into motion, and there's sort of a shadowy figure that's on a picture on an ATM, and it's the only sort of clue they have. So there's a series of people throughout that you think is this the inside man that's inferred to the title? And no, it's not. And so it's fun, and there's other CIs throughout the story, and maybe great things don't happen to any of them.
I never really thought all that much about CIs, but strangely enough, there's a new book out by Amy Pease called Wildwood, and again, it starts with the murder of a CI, and it is the FBI, again, running a CI in the North Woods of Wisconsin. And, every once in a while, when you read a whole array of books coming out like I do, you get two in a row that, have echoes of each other or whatever. And it's fun to see, how you both handle that. But in both cases, the CI, you're not sure if the CI is killed because he's a CI or if it's something else. And because he is a CI, attention goes towards that what he was doing. But then you also have to wonder what in his real life, because CIs do have actual lives outside of being informants.
Sure, and they, by definition, they're turning on their own people, so they're not to be trusted. So you don't know if they're making a deal with someone else, if they've lied to someone else. So it's a great character to have in the book.
It is, and then you also have, what is their motivation? I mean, you all probably read that Aldrich James died, the guy that was one of our biggest traders. And I couldn't remember much about him, but in the New York Times obituary, or whatever it was, they mentioned that he was seriously in debt when he offered himself up as a, as an agent. So for him, it was money. It wasn't ideology. It wasn't, that he supported the communists over democracy or whatever. He was just in it for, the money to get himself out of debt. In Amy's book, the pressure on the CI is that because she has a drug problem, they can put her away on a third strike. So her motivation is to stay out of jail. I don't want you to necessarily tell us why, but there's a whole range of reasons why somebody might be pressured into being an informant.
Yeah, I mean, this is why they're great characters, and yeah, I'm not wanting to like ruin anything in the book. Yeah.
No.
But it's a great character, and I have a CI in the thing I'm writing right now, and it's you get to see their world a little. You get to see how they live. You get to see the world of someone operating in this shadowy world back and forth. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I'm trying to work out, is there a big difference between a CI and a double agent? I mean, it's sort of the same thing, isn't it? The CI?
Yeah.
And a spy guy that turns. I mean, they're basically doing similar.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I hadn't really thought about that because you tend to think of, double agents in the spy world. I didn't really make that association until recently.
Yeah, and you get to the other thing is the CI really works in this world of like this militia and these guns, and you get into what's going on with that in America right now, because that's an area that's changing with every administration. And as I talked to these gun guys, it got really interesting what the definition of a gun is changing in America, and firearm manufacturers are working back and forth with the government to define what's a firearm. And depending on what's a firearm, if you're making something, you become officially a firearm manufacturer. And if you're a firearm manufacturer, you need to put a serial number on something. You need to follow certain rules. So everyone's trying to do just short of it becoming a firearm, so they don't have to follow those rules.
Do you know there used to be books about the late Joe Gores? I don't know if you ever read him, but he was, he often had gypsies as part of his Gores. His name. He was a wonderful author back in the 70s and 80s, won all kinds of awards. And one of the things that they did was they stole cars. And so one of the things they had to do was work out the VIN. How do you change it, whatever. And I was thinking about that if guns have to have registered numbers so that you can identify the manufacturer and who owns it, it wasn't really any different than, the car thief guy who had to change what does VIN stand for? Vehicle
identification number.
Yeah, that's it. Right. So it wasn't really any different than the VIN. So if you're going to steal a car, you wanted to, change the VIN.
Yeah, and it's a great subject for a book because you can actually re-register cars. You can get a new VIN for a car.
You can.
And there's people who buy stock cars from companies and then redo them and get a new VIN assigned. Yeah, I have a friend who's doing that right now in a company.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Are you in insurance? Is that what
I'm in advertising.
Advertising. Yeah, that was it. Okay.
Yeah. So my day job is as a writer, creative director in an ad agency and entertainment ad agency, and we do theme park and hospitality and things like that. And that keeps me pretty busy. And then just grinding, writing books whenever I can, evening, weekends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I just wondered, you have a lot of expertise in different subjects. Where do you pick it up?
Yeah, I mean, some of that is in the day job we work. So I did Fiat Chrysler Automotive for, 5-6 years.
Yeah.
So I launched Alfa Romeo in the U.S. I did Fiat Chrysler ads. The cool thing about advertising is you have to get to know everything about that brand. So for a while, I knew everything about Alfa Romeo, and in my old series, one of the characters in my Northern Georgia police procedural series, one of them drove a used Alfa, and I could put those details in because I knew everything about that.
Very good.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe you're going to become a gun guy all on your own, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, I've shot a decent amount. I've been in some of the gun people you're referring to. One of them invited me to shoot with him, which I'd love to do. I had a couple cervical spine surgeries, so I'm not in the position where I can shoot anymore. I've shot before, but hopefully I'll get back there. I can again.
No, you can't take that.
I can't take the pressure. Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
not
that'd
at
be cool.
all. So, I had a good question. Does anybody have a question from the audience while I think about whatever I was going to ask next? No, come on, guys. You have to participate. It's supposed to be interactive. Oh, Chris, thank you.
The parts for to make it a weapon, aren't there certain ones that classify it as a weapon? Because I've done minimal research. Barrels are not considered a weapon.
Okay.
The lower part of the frame
Yeah.
is.
The frame and the receiver. There's what's called the 80% rule,
Right.
and that governs how much of the gun is unchanged or changed. So you sometimes there's manufacturers that are selling things, and then you can mill them yourself, and then technically when you mill them, you're creating a firearm. And so yeah, there are people.
That's why they don't like the 3D printers now that are making.
Exactly. Exactly. Although a lot of those guns, I mean, they're getting better, but a lot of the early ones that were like 5 years ago, they fall apart after so many times shooting them. Yeah.
So what's a ghost gun?
So that's a media term. That's really what like an industry would call PMFs, or privately manufactured firearms. That's a gun.
Sorry. For women, that means something totally different.
F. I said F, not S. Sorry.
I heard S too. I heard S.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
PMF, privately manufactured
Oh, you
firearm.
said F. Sorry. Okay. You heard S too?
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was
Okay.
My apologies.
Okay.
I shouldn't have chimed in.
So, yeah, a privately manufactured firearm. If you cross, like you're saying, Chris, if you cross a certain line, you've created a gun. And then if you have, you need to follow the rules as a manufacturer of a gun. And so one of the questions in this book is someone is making those in quantity, and they're asking the question, like, is it a major weapons manufacturer who's doing this behind the scenes? And if it is, they will get hauled before, I think as the character says, Congress will shit a purple Twinkie. I don't know. Can I say that on YouTube?
You already did.
Okay.
Right.
They were like, get hauled before Congress. Like, that'll be a big deal if a major weapons manufacturer. Then you go degrees from there. Like, what if it's a European manufacturer? What if it's a European manufacturer in America? Like, so there are different degrees. The law is still the same. And the law changes when, a particular administration puts out a ruling, and then, everyone has to follow it. So it's not really a law, but it is a law.
Okay, so why will it spoil anything if you say why it's central to this investigation? That there are a number. Yeah, it will. It'll
Yeah.
spoil it. No,
Yeah.
we'll not talk about that. Okay. I mean, I learned a lot reading this book. Things that wouldn't normally come my way.
Yeah, I have to research a lot to learn a lot myself. And I obviously have law enforcement people who read the book, and, some who I acknowledge in the acknowledgments, and some who I don't because they don't want me to. But yeah, it's always a great learning experience to get referred to someone new and talk to them. And yeah.
So you earlier wrote books set in North Georgia.
Yeah.
This one, it's mainly Florida, although there are forays to Washington and New York and to see Mom in
Yeah.
Texas.
Right.
What drives you to that part of the country?
So, well, the old series, I was doing a lot of work in Georgia, and I was in like Atlanta a lot, and I would stay up in northern Georgia, and I sort of fell in love with that area. I love the area, and I knew that the original series, the first book, had a plot that goes back to the time of the Civil War. So I was like, okay, well, I'll set it in Georgia. That will
Right.
work for it. But I travel there a lot. My daughter goes to Auburn in Alabama, so I go back there. So, there's definitely like, if you set a book in Alabama and you have to travel for the book, then you get to see your daughter. It's a tax write-off, Barbara, because I'm officially doing research for a book. So
He's confessing this.
saying to the
out loud.
IRS, I am doing
Right.
official research while there. No, I typically do, like, I went on a road trip recently to Mobile. So the next book is set in the Mobile area. So I went to Mobile, and then I traveled up and ended up going to the Auburn, Kentucky game afterwards. But, it allows me to travel in the area. But I don't know. I'm kind of drawn to that area, and it's like a great area with like really rich with details. But
So I'm sorry you weren't here for Rachel Hawkins on Saturday, because part of her mission was to let people know, she said, as a person whose life has been spent in Alabama, that Alabama has beaches. She feels that Alabama's beaches are an unknown asset. Everybody thinks it's Florida. Nobody pays any attention to the fact that Alabama has a has a golf course. It also has at least one really great golf resort. My father, I remember, used to go down. I'm trying to remember what it was called.
Well, in head cases, Orange Beach, Alabama is one of the scenes, and I've
Right.
been to Orange Beach. I basically started in Houston, went backwards, and ended up in Orange Beach. Drove down to Pensacola, and then ended up flying back from Florida. But yeah, Orange Beach is gorgeous, white sand, beautiful, great place to retire. You know,
There you are.
yeah.
I know. I'm always interested in the scenery of the crime. I love books where the landscape or the culture, whatever it is a character in the book. Probably because I was immersed in Tony Hillerman and Robert Parker, and so Boston, Arizona. I mean, I love the that experience of like travel through the book.
I had people write in after Headcase send me emails that said, "Hey, you can drive this, and it's exactly like this in the book." I'm like, "Yes, I drove it." You know, there's a scene in Headcases where he purposely crashes into an RV and goes into sort of Big Thicket, which is, a national, it's not a national park, it's like a state reserve in Texas, and he goes through there, and I went through there, and I basically stopped and, walked around, and then realized I was probably going to get shot by a hunter by accident, and went back to the Dollar General, bought the brightest shirt they sold, and
Good idea.
went back and went through the area. But I think it's like really integral to like drive the area. So I went back to Florida 3 times during this book. Little breaks I would have. I do business in Orlando, so I would stay a couple extra days. And I would just drive the area and stay throughout it and talk to the people and go into the gas stations and speak to people. You don't get the culture unless you do that, in my opinion.
I think listening to other people's conversation is a huge asset for an author, especially for writing dialogue.
Oh yeah, eavesdropping is awesome.
Right.
You know.
Yes. Sometimes you have a whole plot that unfolds
you
right
can-
there while you're having coffee in the local Starbucks.
Yeah, I'll sit in like a restaurant, like a bar. When I was writing my North Georgia series, I would sit in like a barbecue restaurant with my laptop and just make sure you tip generously
Right.
and sit there for like 2 hours, and people will come and go. And while you're writing your scene, you're rewriting another scene, and you're just hearing like
You have bad ears.
yes,
I know.
how
I
the
can see
locals
it.
are speaking. But I'm constantly stalking people wherever I go and listening to their dialogue. And we have a character in this series, Cassie, and she has a particular way of speaking.
Mhm.
And I would keep a notebook, and she speaks like a 19-year-old or 20-year-old, and I have a 20-year-old. So I would keep this white notebook, and whenever my daughter or one of her friends would say something, I would write it down, and I would say, "What does that mean?" And I'm not sure I understand what you're saying, but I know it means something. So I would keep that same white notebook, and that would help me write Cassie. And it was great too. I had a couple readers say, like, "I loved Head Cases, but this girl is so annoying because she sounds like my daughter." And I was like, "Thank you so much." Like, that's the
She
best
is like your
compliment.
daughter.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I love that. So you have, I mean, I don't know if anything's come to fruition, but there was some very interesting news about your first series, right? About in terms of television or movie interest.
It was this series. So with
Well,
Head
it was
Cases,
this one.
yeah, it was this
Oh,
series.
okay.
So Head Cases was part of like a bidding war, and there were like at first 10 people, and then 6 people, 6 production companies or studios that got in it for real. And Warner Television is the one who sort of won that. Originally headed for HBO. These things are the path is like very windy, circuitous. You have to like stick with it. So there was a showrunner. Now there's a new showrunner, a pair. They've written a pilot, and they at first thought it was going to HBO, and now they've taken it out to market. So as you probably know, if you read the news, who knows what the future of Warner Brothers, they're like, a lot of people want to buy it. So, so we'll see where it lands. I actually don't know. I've met the showrunners, like 2 guys, good guys, and they've written a pilot. I haven't read the pilot, but I know they've worked hard writing versions of it. I hope it makes it somewhere. I'd be so curious to see like someone else's creative, vision of this.
Well, it comes back to what I was mentioning earlier. There have been quite a few neurodivergent characters who have been piloting cases or investigations. I keep wanting to call the one I like the best Ulysses, and I know it's not. He's British. and I'll look it up. I'll get out my phone while you talk, so I
Yeah.
can tell you what it is. But it's really worth watching. The basic premise of the plot is he's a twin, and his brother, who is an officer in the Metropolitan Police, it's British, disappears, and nobody knows what's happened to the brother. And the brother's wife calls the twin, who is the neurodivergent character, and says, "Come and impersonate my husband."
Oh, wow, what a
we
great
can
concept.
it really is. So we can try to figure out what's happening. Well, the guy is completely unsuited to walking into an office and try. I mean, he's just hopeless at it. But they get a call in the first episode that something has happened, and they go off to, and he has the right skill set. So while the rest of them are baffled, he's going, "Okay, it was," and they're all amazed, and so they accept him as his brother. Eventually, of course, he gets outed, but he is so good at solving crimes that have baffled the rest of them.
Wow, this sounds like a great show.
It's a great show. I'm gonna.
I do not know. I'm either working in advertising or family or writing so much that I hardly watch any TV. And when they first started bringing head cases out to TV, actually in the first meeting they said, "What do you think of slow horses?" And I was like, I don't know what they're talking. I was like, I guess if your fast horses scare you, slow horses. I was like, I have no idea. And they're like, oh, we're marketing this as slow horses for the FBI. And I was like, obviously Googling really fast in the meeting. And that's a great series. One of my best friends reads every one of those books. I had never heard of it. And, there's so many great shows out right now that are kind of like similar to this in different ways. Did you find it?
This is one, but it's not the one I'm talking about. She's pretty good too.
Who's that?
Patience. It's another British drama, and it's a woman.
You have Acorn TV, don't you? I see ads for Acorn TV all the time.
I don't. You know what I watch the most of? I've talked about it many times. Is MTV or no MHC, and they have mostly French drama. That's where Call My Agent was, which is one of the best things ever. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Patrick. I put it down so I could use my phone. But yeah, BritBox and Acorn, but I'm not sure that BritBox hasn't gone away, or one of them is sort of, which
Okay.
one? Are they both still there? Okay.
Did
Well-
you have a question? Yeah.
No, go on,
Go ahead.
so I can keep looking this up. Oh,
Yeah.
right.
Well, first of all, I was going to say this is giving me. I'm new to the series, so
Okay.
I'm so excited to dive in. But it's giving me Department Q vibes, actually. That Netflix show with Matthew Good, and it's like a ragtag team. It's so good.
I also don't know that show. I'm so embarrassed that I don't watch enough television.
You're busy writing books.
Yeah.
Doing the things that you should be doing. Wasting time watching Netflix. But my question for you is actually, I'm so curious what draws you to writing crime fiction. Is it like the puzzle solving aspect? Do you have that in common with your protagonist? And particularly, I'm fascinated by, because I don't do this, I write like a bunch of standalone thrillers with really crazy unhinged people who have no rules. But writing a procedural or a character that's set within the FBI, like what draws you to
Yeah.
writing that kind of crime?
Well, so my old series was like sort of a small town, and there's limitations to how much you can do and how much mayhem you can place on that town. So at some point I kind of wanted a bigger landscape to play in. And but the FBI is interesting. It allows you to travel around. And, I think in the first book, I started drawing up the character, and the FBI actually recruit people who do have sort of aberrant behavior and think differently. I started thinking, like, how do you take that person, when you take that person and drop them into the FBI, how don't they fail? It's a really bureaucratic environment. It's a very rules-based environment. So I thought, oh, that's so much fun to take a person who's not going to succeed and put them into this environment and see how they survive. And so that was part of the fun of drawing up head cases, is to watch him struggle. And then the idea came for, like, what if there are different people? What if the team is composed of people who in different ways have gone astray at the FBI? And some of which I define in head cases and some of which I don't. There's a couple people you don't know how they ended up there. And if you write, which I know you write, you leave some of that open, you'll come up with a great idea 2 books from now. And hopefully, yeah, if you write yourself into a corner, you'll write yourself out of a corner if you're a good writer. So I've left some of that open. Have you come up with it?
I have found it. I want to call him Ulysses, but his actual name is Ludwig. And he impersonates his missing DCI police officer twin brother, James, to solve the case. And it's, I don't remember, 6 or 8 episodes, but honestly, it is absolutely wonderful.
So what is the name of the show?
Ludwig.
That's the name of the show.
Yeah, Ludwig. I don't know why I want to call him Ulysses.
All right,
There's
Barbara's
some weird,
picks.
some weird transfer that goes on there in my head, but it is. It was 2024, and John Taylor is the, and he's perfect because he's this kind of nebbishy guy. He doesn't look at all threatening, but then he turns out to be a serious threat to the cops. So anyway, I recommend Ludwig. I also recommend Patience. She's autistic. It's different, and she is called in to be kind of a. I'm trying to remember, not a CI exactly, but the circumstances are quite different.
An expert.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, what was it? There was a movie, very, very big movie about somebody taking care of his neurodivergent brother.
Oh, yes.
Remember?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it has the same actor playing both. It's twins again, right?
I don't think it was.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't remember if it was
Yeah.
twins. Anyway, I wish I could. I wish I were better on names. That's the thing about my aging brain has forgotten names. I can remember everything but the actual name. Yeah, but I see more of them taking a role in crime fiction because of their skill set, because they can do things that would be difficult for ordinary investigators to do.
Well,
And
I think
also it kind of solves the whole cell phone and other problem. They don't need necessarily to have all kinds of technology because they already have this brain thing that allows them to do stuff.
I think more and more people are realizing they're neurodivergent and they think differently. And I've got so many emails that have come in after Head Cases came out from people that said, my son thinks differently, my brother thinks differently than other people. Really some heartwarming stories,
Yeah.
some really people really bearing their family, and it was really such a honor for people to share that after the book came out, and I think it's awesome to have a hero who's thinking differently.
You bet.
Yeah.
So you're working on a 3rd book, you said.
Yep. So I'm working on this was part of Inside Man and Head Cases was part of a 2-book deal.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got another 2-book deal, which I'm excited.
Good.
Maybe I'm announcing the first time
Yeah.
here. And so there's another
Well,
2 books.
you don't say that in the acknowledgement.
do
so
not
it
say
made
that,
me
yeah.
nervous. I thought, oh
Yeah.
dear.
So I've got another 2 books. So I'm about 150 pages into the next book,
Yeah.
and just having some fun there, and won't say too much about the plot because I'm still sort of figuring it out as I go.
Do you miss your first series?
I do. What's funny is I feel like people stopped reading it, and then so many people read Head Cases. It's like one of those books that was very buzzy and on Instagram all the time, that people were reading it, and then they were doing what readers do, what I do. If I like something, they were going back and reading the whole series. It was really interesting to watch people who are big readers mow through the old books 1, 2, 3 back to back. So I'd get really interesting emails this is what it's like to read these 3 over a week, which you don't get to see when you're live writing them back then. And as they would talk about those characters, I would miss them. I would miss writing them. I'd miss that town. So yeah,
Well, if the movie or TV deal comes to fruition, then it may be an incentive to go back and spend more time with them.
yeah, absolutely. So right now it's and while I was writing Head Cases and Inside Man, I was popping back and forth to other projects. So I had 2 books I finished, but they're a mess. They're if you're a writer, you finish them, but they're a mess and they need 3-4 months worth of work. So if I had any time, I would work on those. I wrote a sort of a police procedural psychological horror mix, and then I wrote a family story. about 17 days in the life of a family in Central California, that's spread over 40 years, told non-chronologically from 6 different points of view. So
I can see why it might need work.
yeah, so it's a complex, really complex story, but to me, that's probably like one of the best times I've had writing in the last couple of years is writing that book. It's messy. It needs some fixing, but
But it's good to test yourself, you know, to do something different and stretch.
yeah, it was a lot of fun just writing. It's a certain challenge to be writing first person from Gardner's point of view. Like he is such a rigid way of seeing things
Right.
that it's good to sort of step out of that and be writing something that has 3 male and 3 female characters, and you're writing first person from all of them, and they're spread over decades, and like it is the breath of like fresh air, you know. And then you go back in, but at the time, you know, right now I'm under deadline, and like it's like go, you got a book to write, so
Right.
I'm writing the next
That's the trouble with the contract. It comes with a deadline. I know, it's really too bad. It couldn't be more open-ended, right?
right. We're all friends. Just turn it in when you're done.
Yeah.
You know, but it helps to have a deadline. You know, like I bring pages. I'm still in a workshop. I've been in for like 10 plus years, and I bring 10 pages every Friday. And if I don't have a deadline every Friday, I wouldn't have pages ready that Friday. So deadlines are great, even if they drive you
really
crazy.
well for a lot of people.
Yeah.
No kidding. And the secret to being a published author is to actually publish. You know, you have to let the book go at some point. And I think that's really hard for some, you know, some people always are hoping for some additional improvement. They just don't want to turn it loose.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, and we always just sit and talk here, Barbara. But there are other bookstores I go to that are read excerpt, right? So this is usually when I get to Phoenix is where I highlight the excerpt. We don't end up reading it here, but as I'm highlighting it in the hotel, I was like,
you can if you want to.
"Oh, it's okay. I'm good with having conversation." But as I was highlighting, I was like, "That's a bad sentence." Like literally, like an hour ago, I was like, "That needs to be fixed." And you're like, "Oh, that's not good.
Paperback.
That's
yeah.
not getting fixed." Like if I sent that to my editor to fix in the paper, I'd be like, "What are we doing here?" Like you got to fix real things. Like, so yeah, it's hard to let it go. It's hard to like finally have it out. But there's always stuff like you're constantly changing as a writer. So like if you go back 5 years, you're just a different person. You're like, I would never write that page. So I'm sure I don't reread the old books. I have listened to them on audio, which is a different experience. And it was really cool to listen to them back to back in the car. Over a couple of years ago, I got them all and started like listening to them back to back, and it was kind of awesome to experience them like separated from them. But I couldn't have done it while I'm in it. Yeah.
Do you want to read the sentence?
What's that?
Want to read the sentence so we can all agree it was terrible?
No, I'm not going to do that. Absolutely not.
Or you could read the paragraph and we could guess which was the bad sentence, which would be even better. I love it. Sort of a puzzle thing. Well, I'm gonna have to start asking authors if they would like to read. Maybe I'm remiss in that. I always have such a good time talking. I never.
Oh
even
no,
think
we
about it.
always have a great conversation. So there's a different vibe at every store you go to, but this is a great. I've always had for people watching on YouTube or here, you know. I came here with Kent Kruger. It was the first night of the first book. It was so awesome. My wife and I walked in. We saw the table with all the book, The Good Detective, like 50 of them piled up. We started cracking up and turned around and walked down the street and came back because we were like, I can't believe I have a book out. I can't believe this is a real thing. So, you know, this is always great to come here. It kind of means there's another book when I come to the Poison Pen. So it's awesome.
That's very nice. Now, I should tell you, and I will tell the audience too, that we have been working on an archival project, which is pretty much completed. It's still got some work to do. But basically, we have been able on Vimeo to go back and take our entire archive of recorded conversations, both the audio and the video. And now you can search by author. So you can go to our homepage and you can click where it says podcast, and I'll go down to the bottom one, and a search window will come up, and you can write in your name and see what's there. It's not complete yet. I mean, because part of it is that there were different hosts, you know, for different things. And there should be a video to match the audio for every time. and they are not all there yet. But still, it's really exciting to be able to do that. Ashley will be able to do that. You can do that, and I'm
That's
hoping that eventually we will have, these, because we did our first virtual event in 1995. Our first recorded, it wasn't virtual, it was PD James actually here. And she had such an overflow crowd at the library that they brought down the TV cameras from the station upstairs so that the people who couldn't get into the auditorium could watch the program. And their price for doing that was that they could show the video. They could record it and show it. And she didn't want them to do that because she'd arrived in a rainstorm and she was in this awful clothes. Her hair was all wet. She didn't want to be remembered that way. So I had to write a little contract in the back room to the effect that we would never show it during her lifetime.
That's incredible.
And now it gets better because after that, in 1999, the Chamber of Commerce here did this thing called, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was called, something like UKAZ, but it was a cultural exchange with Great Britain. And Princess Alexandra and her husband, she is a great mystery reader. Of all places that she wanted to visit when she came here was the Poison Pen because she was this crime reader. And we had like royal secret agents, checking out the store and all the rest of it. And I thought, what could I do that would make it significant for her? And I thought, I could give her a copy of the PD James. Even Phyllis would not mind if I gave it to Princess Alexandra, right? So that's what we did. It was really great. But anyway, Rob found it. And now he's trying to, upgrade it because it's a very old file. And they're working on restoring some of it. But I think it would be so cool if we can.
I think you need to do like a super cut of like you introducing author after author after author. I think it'd be incredible to just have that early moment back to back to back to back.
It is an interesting idea. I'm the Thriller Legend this year for Thriller Fest, and I donated a fair amount of money to create scholarships because what they don't do is they're helpful to get an unpublished writer a contract, but there's nothing that about, okay, you've got your contract, you've got your first book, now what do you do? And we've made a career out of looking for first-time authors. I mean, I really, you know it,
Yeah.
you've both been here. And so we have this incredible list. I mean, if you really look back on it, Lee Child, Michael Conley, Lisa, practically everybody has signed even Patricia Cornwell signed her first book for us, and then she was Patricia Cornwell, so we didn't want to do that anymore. But, it's an incredible roster, and I think I don't know how many new authors are getting that kind of help. So anyway, I created the scholarships for that, and that's going to be kind of the subject. I told them
That's awesome, and congratulations.
I had to have a panel where I could talk about it, not in terms of me, but in terms of, what new authors should learn. But I do think that this archive would be helpful in the sense that new authors could watch the conversation and see what it was that we talked about that might be useful or helpful in what they want to do.
Well, when you're first starting out, you don't know what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to do it. And there are some of these organizations, but also there's a number of authors who were doing this during quarantine that it was really hard for, and they didn't get some of these experiences. But, I was last year was the Tucson Festival of Books, and it was myself and Kent Kruger and I'm losing the name of the third author, but we were under the big tent and there's 1 million people there. And I brought up hey, Kent interviewed me for my first book on the first day of my first tour at the Poison Pen. And it's awesome. It's awesome to have these experiences here and in other places. And this is a community that's really welcoming. The writers, the bookstores, it's amazing, and the readers, people who are really love to read.
All true. And speaking of people, why don't we see if anybody in the audience has a question besides Ashley? Anybody? Yes. Hi. Did you turn around and wave at them? There she is.
They wanted to know, we all read the book last year together. We read it in less than a day. And they wanted initial idea of the story to your first words on the page?
All right, we have to repeat the question of the audience. Can hear
Okay,
it.
so it was your sister and brother-in-law? Okay, hello, sister and brother-in-law. And they want to know what the process is from initial idea to first words on the page. So I will do a certain amount of plotting ahead of time. So I don't like to be more than 100 pages ahead of what I'm writing at any point. If I can surprise myself, I won't surprise you, is the idea behind that. So I have a plot wall that I've installed on my wall, and I like put scenes up, and I'll write a short description of every scene and have it up there. So I'll try to plot a little bit, but I won't try to plot too much. So that's typically part of that. But for me as a writer, I will start with like voice. So I will try to write out the voice of whoever is the first person and get that down, and I will keep grinding in circles until I feel like I have the opening. In terms of planning character, I'd rather go back about 100 pages in and figure out the characters rather than try to come up with everything. I feel like if there's too much to manage, I'll never start. So I will just start writing and get into it. I do, as I mentioned earlier, I have a workshop I'm in with an author, and we'll meet once a week and critique pages, and you get a feel for whether it's working or not pretty fast. But that's typically my process. It's a certain amount of organization, but not too much.
Can you see the end you're working towards? Is the surprise on the journey, or is the surprise at the end?
I usually like right now. So to give an example of like the book 3 in this, I'm right around page 140, 150. I know the plot. I know the last 10 scenes.
Okay.
And I know the opening 15, 20 scenes. I don't know the middle, and but I know I have enough plot for a book. I'm just trying to figure out. This series specifically is around puzzles and puzzle solving, so you have to know the exact right order to reveal everything, and that's the part that's tricky. So I will typically, like last weekend, I was like, I need to figure out the middle plot. So I will do sequences where I just have a bunch of Post-its, and I'm like, this has to happen, then this has to happen, then this has to happen, this has to happen. Okay, but those aren't scenes. Those are just like information, like discoveries. And then I will just sit there and stare at the wall. So my wife will come in sometimes, and there's a rule kind of where I write, like, if you knock on the door and I don't answer, that means go away.
Go away.
And my kids would have the same thing, like during high school, they're like, knock on the door. They know I'm in there, and then they look in the window, and I'm like, don't look in the window. Like, you just distracted me. But a lot of times I'm just sitting on the coffee table staring at the plot wall. Like, it's going to tell me something. And then a lot of times after like a couple hours of trying to figure it out, you just get one idea, and it's a great idea, and it has nothing to do with the plot you're trying to solve. So you just stick that up there and say, like, that's awesome. No idea where that fits in, but your brain just comes up with that. And
It'll be for another book.
yeah, so it's like sticks it up. And yeah, if you want to figure out how to plot a book, try to plot the book you're writing, and you'll come up with all the answers for the other book that you're thinking about. That's sort of the process. So I don't know if that answers your question. Okay.
Take a walk, take a shower,
Yeah.
go for a drive. You
Yeah,
know.
walk
I
the
think-
dog.
Yeah, I think when your brain, goes off into idle or whatever it is, then all that stuff can surface.
Yeah, I mean, last weekend trying to plot, I think I came up with 2 scenes and then 20 other unrelated ideas.
When we had Poison Pen Press for 20 years, I probably edited 800 and some books before we sold it. We sold it to Random House, actually Source Books, but now Random House in 2018. And I used to have those same, how do I help the author here? I can see there's a problem, but I can't figure out what it is. And, it would come to me in the night, or it would come to me in the shower, or I'd be taking a walk, or whatever it is. And then there it would be popping up. So your brain is actually whirling along, sort of like your computer, grinding away, but
Yeah.
you just don't know it.
Yeah, it's always working in the background, trying to solve it.
And sometimes if you're not actively doing it, it gives it room to emerge. Ashley's nodding her head. Is it sort of the same for you?
100% walks, showers, anything to. If I stop trying so hard, that's when it.
Shower ideas are awesome. Everything comes in the shower. I also email myself in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
All the time, I email myself in the middle of the night. A lot of times it's nonsense. I would say 50% of the time it's nonsense. Like, it's unreadable words. and you're like, oh my God, I know this was the solution, but nope, it's gone. So
Must be really annoying for you. I'm talking to her, not you.
Sometimes he'll tell me something to write down.
I don't have my phone, so I'll say, oh, text me these words, and then
You
it's
guys are really screwing up uninterrupted sleep. Come on. This is bad for your health. All right, who else has a question, if anybody? Yes, sir.
From head case to this, is it going to be easy to pick up?
yeah.
If you read head case a while ago?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of people. You get a lot of the bookstagrammers are they pick up and they pick up things. The number of them, I would say maybe a quarter of them have not read head cases, and I'm getting tagged by those people, and they've the number of those people have just read it as a standalone of saying I'm going back and reading head cases now. So I think writing another series before this, you kind of get in the practice of like every book has to be a standalone at some point, and you have to reintroduce the characters. Sometimes that's annoying if you read a series that they're introduced again, but you never know when someone's gonna find your series. In my other series, I was always fascinated to, like, someone would say, I just read A Good Kill and I'm going back to read The Evil Men Do, and then after that I'll read The Good Detective. I'm like, oh my God, they're reading it backwards. And they were like, this was a great experience. So I would always say, like, how was the experience? And they said, awesome. And they're not reading it in order. So I think, if you're doing a good job, each book has to be a standalone, and it also, you can do longer lead stories. So I'm just at the point, I didn't know how many books my publisher wanted necessarily. In my other book, my other series, I kind of knew that it was going to be 3 books, or those 3 books, so you could start to write longer lead stories. In this, I wasn't sure, so I'm now starting to like write these longer lead stories that might be 1 or 2 books longer. But you never know. Publishing industry it's like a lot of industries. It's competitive, it's fickle.
Discuss publishing industry,
Yeah.
right? Totally dysfunctional.
Yeah.
So I know the answer isn't going to be any contemporary TV shows because we already established that you don't know slow horses. But what were the influences that were kind of like cooking in your head when you started this series? Like where were you pulling from?
So you're right. Yeah, since I watch almost no television, it's not that. A lot of people, I will tell you that people are constantly telling me it reminds them of Criminal Minds. And on Instagram, they put the song. At first, I was like, what is this song that's over all the posts? And it's the opening credits song of Criminal Minds. I did watch that years and years ago. I watched maybe a season of it. But I think mostly the first book, I was just trying to put together a number of things, and you start to layer them, and some make sense, and you keep them, and some you jettison, right? So I started with, if you've read Headcase, I started with like a mother-son. I wanted to have a mother-son story. So, and I wanted it to be different. There is a mother-son story in Headcases, and it's carries throughout this, that I thought it was really interesting to have this different type of like this boy who grew up thinking differently, and what would be the relationship with his mom, and if she didn't believe in labels, how would that change it? So that was like one thing that was just kind of weird to have in a police procedural, but I was like, I'm going to have this as part of the background story. So then you start layering on, I want it to be an ensemble. I want the ensemble to look like people of today. I don't want it to look like this is a book from the 90s. I want it to look like it's in the 2020s. So what would those people look like nowadays? Like, what would they look like in terms of gender and ethnicity, and like how they act and how they talk to each other? So for me, it was like those sorts of concerns. Like I was building the group of people and struggling like you do as a writer. So I built Cassie as a completely different character, and it wasn't working at all. And if you heard me here, I think last year I talked about when I was first writing Headcases, I was writing 3 books at once. I was popping back and forth. It was sort of a reset moment coming off my other series. So I was writing that family story that I ended up finishing. I was writing that other police procedural. I was writing Headcases. It was like, I wonder which one of these stories will sort of go to the head of the class. And the minute I got the characters of Cassie and Shooter down, that book just moved forward. And the other books sort of like fell backwards. And I was like, I'll get to those whenever I get to those. So really getting the characters down in the ensemble is, really the main thing. And then it was like, okay, what is the plot these people are going to solve? Because I think building the unit for me really is what made the story. And I think if you read series in sort of whether it's FBI or police procedure or whatever, if you read series, what you love is the characters. What you come back for is like them, you know. So once I established his mom and his relationship, then I was like, oh, I'd like to wonder how that works going the other way. Like he has a daughter. They have a really interesting backstory, which I get into a little bit, but it's still kind of wide open. And how would the daughter, his ex-wife is in prison. So how would the daughter of a criminal and Gardner be? Like, what would the fruit of that be? And how would she act? And that's a lot of fun too, you know. Yeah, she gets into a little trouble at her school in the Inside Man, and it's fun to watch what she does and his interpretation of it, you know. Yeah.
No, I think you're right. The characters are what make you return. Or in my case, the landscape. I already said the scenery of the crime will get
Yeah.
me. You know, I went back to every Hillerman, regardless of the story or the characters, just because I wanted to read more about, you know, Arizona, New Mexico. We actually had maps. There's a company in Colorado that did a whole marvelous map of all the Hillerman, you know, territory and everything. Unfortunately, I don't think they're available anymore. But we have lots of people who would actually drive it. You know, I mean, and there are tours that authors will set up sometimes. You know, you can do Hammett's San Francisco or Parker's Boston or whatever, you know, where this readers are so entranced by Jack the Ripper's London.
Yeah.
Well, he's not a writer, but, you know, there we go.
Yeah, in my first series, at some point I got as a Christmas present for my daughter. She went through the books and built a map of the fictitious town.
Right.
And, you know, I had been building it really rough. After you do the first book and you think, well, there's no rules. And the second book comes along and I'm in editing and the proofers start asking like, hey, in the first book, he was going west, and you're like, oh my God. So I started making like the world's ugliest map.
Okay.
And I've talked to other writers about this, and they've done like, you know, I talked to another writer I won't name, like said, oh yeah, you know, I had the same problem, and I was writing in a cafe, and I took, you know, like the tray insert, and they drew their whole town, and they're like, oh yeah, that tray insert from the fast food restaurant ended up getting taped on my wall, and that fictitious town is up on my wall, and I used it for 4 books, and I'm not going to reveal who that is, but I'm sure they've been here, Barbara. And so my daughter built out this whole map of the area because I would mention the freeways. So she took my really ugly map and did a really nice thing and built it. And then I stopped writing that series. Still have the map in case I need to go back.
Okay.
You know, because I won't remember.
Weren't you lucky to have a proofreader that was that conscientious? You know?
Yes.
I mean, I'm not sure that there aren't that many of them left, so I'm happy to hear there was one who actually paid attention for your book.
I usually do a timeline, and it turns out that some of the proofers are doing a timeline.
Right.
So the proofer relationship is a weird and interesting relationship because you never meet your proofer. You just get notes from them,
Right.
and then you send the notes back to your editor who talks to them. So it's a love triangle that you never get to meet one of the people.
I love that, a love triangle. That sounds absolutely great. Well, we should probably end on that happy note before we paralyze you from sitting in these chairs too long. Thank you very much for coming tonight. Virtual audience, thank you very much for joining us. Let's give John a round of applause. Yay.
Thank you.
And I'm sure he'd be happy to sign your book if you would like him to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. All right. Now I'm going to turn my phone back on because it's even worse if you forget to do that. There we go. Do you need a pen? We have plenty of pens.
I had some in the back when I was
That's
signing.
okay. Let me